Okay, so now I've got a 128 gig card loaded up with the new firmware from Retro Game Corp, and let's give it a go. Alright, so right off the bat you see we've got a shutdown menu now. So we'll come here and hit this to actually shut down, and it'll properly shut the card down so you won't lose your save game. So that's really nice. It's a really great feature. Let's see. Now it looks like we've got titles in some of these screens, and these screens are totally customizable. They're just PNG images. You can go in and change them out to whatever you want. So I probably will do that in a little more customization at some point. Let's look at Super NES. So I went ahead and scraped video previews, and so now we've got all these little wonderful previews going. And again, you can scroll faster with the right or left D-pad. Let's load up some Donkey Kong here. So you can see RetroArch is actually pulling up save games and actually doing its work behind the scenes here. So now if I hit select and start at the same time, I can access RetroArch menu, and I can customize things like video output and scaling. So this is nice. Some games you need to adjust the aspect ratio, and then you need to go back to quick menu, go all the way to the bottom in overrides, and then you want to save overrides for this core. So the core is going to be the system you're playing on. So Super Nintendo, you know, if you need to change the aspect ratio for all your games, you're going to need to go there and then save your core overrides with this button here. So that's really nice. You can turn off, where is it? You can turn off shaders or some of the other things that you may or may not want. You can add games to favorites in here, so you can have a favorites menu in here if you just want to load up RetroArch from the get-go and just drop in to your favorites instead of having to scroll for each one, which is really nice. Again, I wouldn't mess with these settings too much unless you're like trying to adjust scaling a little bit. If you try and push the system to do more than it's supposed to, then you're going to start getting stuttering and stuff. So largely I'd leave it the way the Retro Game Corp has it. They're gonna have it pretty much optimized for you, and so you're not gonna need to mess with this too much, other than maybe some scaling. So you can either press these two at the same time to come back, or you can go back to quick menu and resume. So yeah, this plays great. This is awesome. So now, if you want to save games, instead of pressing the power button and going down to save state, which doesn't work, you know, after you've turned off the device, now you just hit select, right button. So you see it's saved right here. Probably can't see that too well. And then if you want to load, you hit select, left shoulder. So that'll load your save state. So yeah, this is a fantastic update to the firmware. Gives you a lot more customization, lets you fix some of the main issues that were going on with this device. No favorites, and you know, the biggest one, save games weren't working. So that was a big no-no out of the box for this device. But now I'm really in love with it because of this little firmware update that really seems to fix the things that I was having problems with. So okay, so now if you want to quit, it's going to be kind of like a RetroPie type of situation. You're going to do select and power for this specific device. Will quit you out of the game. So I thought I'd do a little gameplay footage of Super Mario World for the Super Nintendo. So yeah, overall this feels very much like a Super Nintendo controller with just slightly smaller buttons and D-pad. But it's going to feel very natural. When I tried to play a game like this using an emulator on my phone with like an Xbox 360 style controller, the D-pad just wasn't really made for this kind of, you know, gaming. It's really meant for, you know, going through the menus and selecting something. You know, it's not going to play well for side-scrolling games, 2D games like this. So that's partially why I got this device, was I wanted something I could just pick up and play, and felt like a Super Nintendo, but in a mobile kind of capacity. So this plays very nicely. I could totally go through, I keep messing up, I could totally go through this whole game and hardly even notice that I'm playing, you know, on a mobile device and not the original Super Nintendo, with the exception of this D-pad getting, with the exception of this D-pad kind of starting to hurt your thumb after a while, since it's just a little bit harder than the original. But other than that, it feels very similar to an original Super Nintendo game. Alright, so here's Nintendo 64, which was recently added with the firmware update. So we'll go in and we will take a look at Super Mario Bros. 64, or Super Mario 64. So already you can see, you know, some glitching. It's quite a bit worse resolution overall. I've had to take it down to the lowest resolution to get it to play even kind of smooth. So again, it is playable, but it's not going to look real great. So this looks pretty, let me take off. Yeah, this looks pretty grainy for Nintendo 64. Very playable, of course, but you're still going to have some relative graininess going on. And the audio is going to cut out. Looks like we're barely making 25 frames per second. Not even a full 30 frames per second. So this is kind of what to expect. Obviously games like 007 aren't even going to run hardly at all. So you really have to play around with N64. You know, there are 2 emulators on this device, and so you can try dropping your ROMs into that folder. I think it's for Parallels, and see how some games play better in that emulator versus the default one here. Again, it's just going to be kind of hit or miss. Most of your games probably aren't going to run very good or look pretty bad. This one, since, you know, usually people figure out a way to get Mario 64 running on most devices at least, so this is what you're going to get. This is probably going to be your best performing ROM out of the N64 batch. But again, you need to just try it out yourself and see which one runs best for you. I'd expect this game's going to have some slowdowns. Yeah, as you start rendering more of the interior of this castle. You can hear it skipping worse. I can feel it slowing down. Frame rate is dropping a bit. Here it's running smoother. Yeah, we bumped up to 29. But as you get into larger renders, it's going to slow down, bog down a little bit. Especially, you know, the beginning of this level, for example. You're going to see some real slowdowns as we enter this level here. So this, at least this game in particular, it's nice that it has its own port, because this is pretty slow and hard to play. Playable, but not wonderful. I'm curious if there's some overclocking we could do without melting the device. so we could get some better, slightly better performance that we need for N64 games. But we'll have to do a little more testing in that regard. Again, you have this option, and you might get some of these to work right and run pretty well, but I really count on your handhelds and some of your, 16 and 32-bit consoles are going to run real fine on this machine. Even some of this can run okay. I know I played some Virtual Fighter, and it was, it was passable, but not great. But yeah, in terms of handhelds and some of the just strictly older systems, this is going to run really nice. So yeah, and that's really what I wanted this for. Primarily was Nintendo and SNES. Like, I don't really want to play arcade games on this. I can, and that's fine, but I have an arcade in the basement for this sort of thing. And now you can scroll through everything, and if you need to just get into RetroArch, it's going to have its own option now. So you can go into RetroArch, not loading any cores, and adjust settings for that here as well now. Okay, additionally, you may have noticed Super Mario 64. This is a nice little port of Super Mario 64, so it does not rely on an emulation type of situation. No rhyme intended there. It's running directly natively off this device instead of emulating an N64 and then attempting to run the game. So if we pull this up, I just wanted to share just how beautiful this runs. It is completely smooth, 60 frames per second, looks completely high def. It is fantastic. It really is something else to try and play. And you can use the little joystick. I played for a couple hours this game, and I experienced no slowdowns, discernible at least, that I could notice. So this is a really nice little build. You have to go to Retro Game Corp. One of their videos lays out you have to build this basically natively, and then drop it onto your card. And it runs so well. I wish there was a core option for some of my favorite games like this, a port option rather, for some other of my favorite games like this, because this runs so amazing. By comparison, so you can see just how smooth the pixels are too. Very clean, looks great. This particular game you have to hit start R1 and then get down to quit with the joystick, because it's not using an emulator, so it's using its own little UI to quit. You build it with the original ROM though. So now, to wrap up the last little bit I have to know is you have to make sure you remind yourself to go to the screen and shut down. So you hit A to shut down, and it's going to launch an actual shutdown script that will shut down the card properly. And so you're not going to have issues with your save games not working anymore. So I've tested this out personally. It's kept every save game that I've started, and has handled it very well. So again, this is kind of a mixed bag of emotions if you buy this device, because you're not going to get a lot of that higher end emulation running real great. If that's what you want, you might need to go with something stronger than this. But if you just want the basics, this is going to handle very well, and especially with the firmware update. You'll get to have some actual save games and be able to continue from where you left off. Again, this is a nice little option to get this little case for it to go into and keep it protected. I got kids, so they might grab it and step on it or something, so I keep this up on my desk somewhere away from them, and it's kind of nice if I drop it or something, at least it's protected in a case. Additionally, which is kind of nice, since it's got this little netting, I can add some micro SD cards. If I want to have some different installs going on, I can put them in here, keep them in the little netting here. And I also, it's probably a little bit of overkill, but I've got a sunglass case that helps me keep the kind of glass clean, you know, kind of like you do with sunglasses. I just kind of wipe it with this microfiber cloth here, and then I like to put it in here. Keeps it nice and clean. No smudges on the screen when I pull it out. Kind of have to tuck some of this away so it doesn't get caught in the zipper. But yeah, this is a nice little option for you know, keeping it in good shape. So, all right, thanks for joining me on this video. Like and subscribe. Leave a thumbs up if you like this video. Just leave any comments about what you think of this device and if you think it handles kind of what you think it should, or if you think it should handle more than that. Love to hear what you have to say. And thanks for stopping by.